Hey guys, and welcome. I guess I must have been having a bit too good of a day yesterday as I decided to sit down and finally watch what's considered one of the most extreme movies ever made. After which I started watching The Underground, which is a story for another time. I don't know who I think I am to think that I should watch these movies one after the other, but that's for the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing on a movie called The Man Behind the Sun. And I know my mom has asked me if it's possible for me to talk about some more happy or positive things on my channel, but Mom, this one is not for you, okay? So let's talk about this movie and why I thought this feature deserved its own video. Set during World War II, the film drops you into Unit 731, a real Japanese military facility which conducted experiments so horrific that other war stories seem almost tame by comparison. And if you're not familiar with the dark history of Unit 731, it was a facility that was run by doctors, scientists, and soldiers, and they truly believed they were doing necessary work. Located in occupied Manchuria during World War II, Unit 731 operated under the banner of research. In practice, it was a factory of suffering. People, mostly Chinese civilians, along with prisoners of war from other nations, were treated as test subjects in experiments, similar to Auschwitz. Frostbite studies, biological weapon tests, vivisections without anesthesia. They convinced themselves it was for the greater good, or at least that the consequences didn't matter enough to stop. The tragedy doesn't end with the war either. Much of Unit 731's leadership walked away without any punishment. And as a matter of fact, many of the scientists were quietly absorbed by post-war scientific communities or protected for the sake of Cold War intelligence. Justice was traded for information. Kind of makes you wonder how much a human life is worth when politics and power are involved. The movie's been very controversial from the get-go, as it's very ethically complicated. It really blurs that line between testimony and exploitation. And since it's considered extreme cinema, you can imagine the director didn't shy away from showing, not just implying, the atrocities that had been committed by the Japanese. The director, Tun Fei Mu, definitely took the job of creating a movie which would showcase the treatment of his people seriously. There is no doubt about that. The story follows a group of Japanese boys conscripted into the youth corps. Basically, kids handed uniforms and told they're soldiers now, while they're being brainwashed on the daily. They're assigned to the Kwantung Army and shipped off to a Unit 731 facility run by Shiro Ishii, a man who revels in human suffering and hides behind the idea that it's for research. At first, the boys have no idea what they're stepping into. Then the doors open, and they're hit with the reality. The experiments, the prisoners, the goal of creating a super contagious strain of bubonic plague to unleash on the Chinese population if Japan needs a final, desperate weapon. Even the boys, raised on military obedience, are sickened by what they see. And in the middle of all this, they befriend a mute Chinese child from the nearby village. They play catch with him, share moments of normalcy, almost forget where they are and that their friend is considered an enemy. So when their commanders tell them to bring the boy inside the facility, they do it without thinking. Because why would adults, their own officers, harm a child? And then reality hits like a brick. The senior medical staff vivisects the boy for research. No anesthesia, no hesitation, just another specimen. The boys finally snap. They gang up on the commanding officer and beat him, the smallest rebellion in a place where rebellion usually ends in execution. Throughout the movie, we witness many scenes of human experimentation, or, let's be honest, human torture. There are also instances of harming newborns, animal abuse, scenes from the crematorium where the worker spends his days cutting the bodies up and throwing the limbs into the fire. Meanwhile, Ishii develops a new ceramic bomb designed to spread plague-carrying fleas without killing them. To test it, prisoners are tied to crosses like props in a nightmare, with the bomb dismembering them and mutilating their bodies if they're unlucky enough to be within the bomb's proximity. But the experiment falls apart when Japan's Air Force retreats. The prisoners break loose, chaos erupts, and Japanese troops mow them down. Some soldiers are killed too, but nobody seems to care about that. Then news arrives. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The Soviets entering the war. Ishii's first instinct? Order everyone, soldiers, wives, children, to commit suicide rather than be captured. Eventually, he's convinced to evacuate instead. But the test subjects don't get that mercy. Unit 731 destroys everything. The evidence, the bodies, the living prisoners, with gas and explosives. That night, everyone gathers at a train station, trying to pretend there's still a normal world waiting for them. But one surviving prisoner, disguised as a Japanese soldier, lunges at them before being killed, impaled on a Japanese flag. The Youth Corps boys are left clutching that blood-soaked flag, realizing exactly what they've been part of. The epilogue is the final punch. Dr. Ishii isn't punished. He collaborates with the Americans, trades his research for immunity, and later shows up connected to biological weapons in the Korean War. And these boys? They go home carrying the stain of their education, struggling through the rest of their lives with a history no one wants to acknowledge, and that they can never fully escape. Now, I thought the movie had some merit. Its portrayal of the moral dilemma faced by the children especially, as well as the propaganda pushed on them. I think the movie did, in fact, do a good job of that. Do we need to show the scenes of brutality in order to get the viewer to understand the severity of the crimes committed? I think the answer to that will vary depending on who you ask. I come from a place of believing that people need to be reminded of what happened in the past. It's very easy to have history repeat itself unless we to some extent connect with the events and the repercussions. Sometimes we have to look at ugly things. Personally, I found the movie quite emotional despite its extreme content. I can't say I thought it to be particularly exploitative or shocking. I did, however, have one big problem with the movie, something I wasn't aware of when I chose to watch it, and something that would have prevented me from giving it a chance in the first place. And I'm talking about the real instances of animal cruelty. I'm going to spend the next minute or two talking about that, so please refer to the timestamps if you'd like to, understandably, not hear this part. Farmers from the surrounding areas were asked to catch rats and deliver them to the set. Those rats were then used to kill a cat. Imagine a horde of rats in a room with a cat thrown in. Absolutely unnecessary, evil, served no purpose whatsoever. The movie had more than enough extreme content to do just fine without this scene, and I'm not sure why the director felt the need to make this scene happen. And that's not even the end of it. At the end, when everyone flees the building and the Japanese are trying to get rid of the evidence, they set those rats on fire. Yes, the live rats. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. I love rats. I think they're wonderful, incredibly smart creatures, and to see that made my heart sink. I understand that in China, especially back in 1991, animal rights were not respected. Not that they are now. But it's so incredibly ironic that the movie is about useless evil, and the director inflicts just that upon the cat and the rats. I feel sick just thinking about it. So whatever merit or value the movie had was squashed the moment those animals were hurt. I read about how the director tried to say that the cat scene was fake, but if you watch the movie, you will see that I don't think that that's true. People who worked on set for the movie also said the director was trying to avoid further controversy, which is why he decided to claim the scene was fake. And this still isn't all. One of the most infamous moments connected to the film is the autopsy scene. What you're seeing isn't a prop or special effects. It was filmed using the body of a real child who had died in an accident. The director had permission from the parents, and a licensed coroner performed the procedure on camera while dressed in the Japanese military uniform for authenticity. Then there are the frostbite experiments. Those frozen arms you see, they were rubber molds or movie magic. They were real human limbs taken from cadavers. The actress in the scene, who happened to be the director's niece, had to physically handle the real frozen arms during filming. Again, I had no idea the movie used real human corpses, and I am absolutely baffled by how the parents of the deceased child gave the go-ahead for using their child's body for the scene. It absolutely blows my mind. But now that you know and you've been warned, at least if you decide to watch The Men Behind the Sun, you have the full knowledge of what was happening behind the scenes. It begs the question of whether or not art justifies any and all means. And to me, someone who loves weird, gruesome things, it does not. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching this video. Where do you guys think art ends and immorality, depravity, or even criminality begins? Super interested to hear what you have to say about this, and as always, if you enjoy the video, please like and or subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.